Hello everyone, my name is Ardetha and welcome to the top 10 most violent killers in Dead by Daylight. With such a violent list of killers overall, this list is going to be very interesting. To start things off, let's talk about how we will place killers in this list with the rules. We will only be judging killers based on their actions before they were taken by the entity. We will be judging their brutality, pain levels, and physical and mental trauma they inflict on their victims. We will not take into account any context, any motives, whether it was an accident or not, and the overall kill count. Number 10. The Wraith. When you think of the Wraith's lore, the first thing that comes to mind is that he's mostly innocent. He was an unwitting assistant in the murder of hundreds of people, slowly being crushed to death in a car compactor. Of course, we all know about how he raged and snapped when he found out that he was being used to murder all these people, to which he then put his boss in the same car compactor, crushed him, and then pulled out his spine by yanking on his head. Aware of it or not, crushing people in a car compactor is gruesome, considering how slow it is and that they can feel every part of their body being crushed all at once. This is not a nice way to go out, and yanking someone's spinal cord out is the cherry on top. Number 9. The Deathslinger. I don't think many people have bothered with the Deathslinger's lore, but it gets pretty gruesome. Deathslinger's list of mishaps is already quite longer than the Wraith's. First off, he shot his boss in the gut with a gun that propelled railroad spikes, nailing him to the desk. After that, he began work on his spear gun that he's famous for in DBD, with the intention of reeling people in. With his first test, he shot someone in the abdomen and began to reel them in, but to his surprise, he didn't reel in a whole person. What came towards him was that victim's guts and intestines, as they had been ripped out from inside them, leaving the victim to slowly bleed to death, feeling the agony of their guts ripped out. Although this wasn't the intention that he had in mind when he created this gun, and so he kept tweaking the weapon, each time testing it out on a new victim, and each time their guts coming right out of their body, until eventually he perfected it, and it allowed him to finally reel people in, pulling all of them into him, and not just their insides. Number 8. The Clown. The Clown's story started off innocent enough. He would often find feathers on the ground and he loved how soft they felt, and after watching the birds eat food from the feeder in his garden, he wondered what it would be like to hold one and feel how soft they are. He then went to a local dentist and got himself some anesthetic which he would use to place a trap on the bird feeder to finally feel how soft these birds really were. Once he finally got hold of one of these birds, he could see it slowly start to come back into consciousness. However, instead of letting it go like he planned, he could feel his fingers tighten more and more around its neck, until eventually, all movements stopped. He took one feather from this bird and disposed of the body, starting a new collection where many more birds would meet the same fate. This obsession would evolve onto larger animals like squirrels, raccoons, and dogs, starting his own paw collection. Of course, he finally upgraded his anesthetic to the gas bottles that you see in Dead by Daylight. He would then drug and kidnap men and women of any age before bringing them back to his caravan and tying them up. Once his victims woke up, he would begin torturing them both physically and mentally, enjoying every second of their screaming and crying. This would continue for days until the victims were at their weakest point. From there, he would cut off one of their fingers, letting them feel every second of it, before finally killing them after the fact. Whilst having your fingers cut off might not be as bad as having your actual guts ripped out, physically and mentally torturing people for days at a time has earned the Clown number 8 on this list. Number 7. The Trickster. Due to the way he presents himself in game, he doesn't seem like the sort of person that would do anything too shocking, but his lore has something different to say. The first violent act the Trickster committed was letting his team members die in a fire, and of course his natural reaction was to try and help them, but he then realised if they all died he would have the spotlight solely on him, so he intentionally stopped and watched them burn to ashes. This alone is enough to get him somewhere on this list just by how bad burning really is. The heat makes you much more sensitive to pain, and of course, due to it being slow by nature and eventually covering your entire body, burning is effectively the worst way anybody could die. But this is only the start of his story. Becoming obsessed with the sound of people screaming his name in agony as they die, he began to abduct people, torture them, and dissect people alive. Some people had their teeth removed, while others had their eyeballs pulled out and replaced with cufflinks. Number 6. The Huntress. Aside from killing squirrels, hares, minks, foxes, wolves, and bears for food, she killed any people that entered her woods, whether this be other hunters, people just passing through, or even soldiers during the war. However, when any of these people had little girls with them, she wouldn't be able to kill them. She saw too much of herself in these little girls and wanted to save them, and brought them home with her, except she didn't understand that they needed food or water, as of course she hadn't been taught these things by her mother, who unfortunately died when she was very young. And of course, without any food or water, these poor girls chained up to the wall with a rope around their neck would all end up starving or dying of dehydration or freezing. And the Huntress didn't understand. She didn't know why they kept dying. Nothing was hurting them. It didn't make sense to her. But when people stopped passing through her woods, she didn't get any more chances. So then she took the matters into her own hands and started raiding nearby villages, slaughtering men and women and even little boys, just to take the little girls with her. Honestly, compared to other people in this list, murdering a few people isn't too bad, and to be fair, starvation is nowhere near as bad as burning alive. However, I think the sheer level of psychological trauma that these little girls had to endure, seeing this masked creature slaughter their parents in front of them just to be kidnapped by it and chained to the wall only to slowly starve to death, while all they can think about is their parents being murdered by the very same person that they're trapped with. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. This one was a difficult one. Number 5. The Blight. The Blight used prisoners of war as unwilling test subjects for his creations. There were lots of failures, lots of iterations, and lots of testing. And as you can see on screen, the things that he was testing on people didn't exactly yield the most pleasant results. The lore doesn't go too in depth about what these results were, but you can infer a lot from what you see in game. I imagine some of these tests would result in people slowly decaying alive, watching their flesh rot from their bones, amongst some other disgusting outcomes. And when he finally quote unquote perfected his recipes, he then sold these serums as work performance enhancement drugs. And eventually it turned out he hadn't perfected it, and entire workforces of people dropped dead under the consumption of his creation. Number 4. Leatherface. You really wouldn't expect this from how much of a joke he is in Dead by Daylight, but Bubba is not someone that you would want to meet, because if you did, he would most certainly turn you to meat. As you would expect, Bubba is known for chainsawing people to death, but it's nowhere near as fast as you would expect it to be, and it often takes a good while for him to grind through your bones with that chainsaw of his. Of course, this takes place whilst you're still alive and conscious, and Bubba has been keeping people on hooks since before it was cool, using meat hooks as a method to stop his victims from running away way before the entity became part of the picture. And when he combines these two methods, you are in for a very painful experience. Feeling your skin stretch under the weight of your body as you're dangling from that meat hook is going to be absolutely agonizing, but the things get worse when he grabs the chainsaw, as he doesn't always just go for a decapitation or something that'll kill you quickly. He sometimes takes the most painful, drawn out routes he could possibly use. For instance, placing the chainsaw between your legs and then slowly chainsawing upwards all the way through the center of your body whilst you're still alive and conscious. I don't think I need to say any more than that. Number 3. Pinhead. The Cenobites in general are just pain and torment embodied, and they reflect that very well from the gruesome, violent, and disturbing atrocities that they commit. This list includes, but is not limited to, hooking and chaining people over and over again, and then proceeding to pull their skin from their flesh all over at the same time, as well as decapitation, removing people's heads in a not so painless way. A lot of these murder methods don't kill the victims immediately, and in fact, a lot of the time, the Cenobites, or more specifically Pinhead, likes to take their suffering as an opportunity to have a monologue. You could probably say this about a lot of the things that the Cenobites do, but I personally couldn't even imagine the sheer level of agony that it must be to have all of your skin ripped from your body all at once, whilst you're still alive. I just can't fathom it. Number 2. The Doctor. The Doctor is just as horrific as you would think. Torturing people to extract information for the CIA was only the beginning of his horrible downward spiral. Whilst he started off with regular, common torture methods, he quickly descended into more and more violent and extreme methods, which of course yielded amazing results when extracting information. He ended up settling on a go-to method for extracting information, and that was electroshock therapy. Anyone who's seen American Horror Story already knows just how bad this is, but he left his victims a hollow shell of what they once were. This alone is fucked up beyond all belief, and already gets him fairly high up this list. But there is still more that is so bad that behaviour even removed it from his lore. Eventually, the Doctor snapped and killed every single person in the Leary's Memorial Institute, including his colleagues. And the now removed lore is that in his office, after he abandoned the facility, they found his mentor strapped to a chair, with his head peeled open and different electrodes and sensors placed into his still functioning brain. On top of all of the physical torture methods and splitting people's skulls open, you have to imagine the sheer level of psychological damage that anyone that came into contact with him would have had to endure. Some of this is reflected in-game. Hallucinations, paranoia, anxiety, severe PTSD, even seeing visions of his face when they close their eyes. I would say that the psychological damage that he has inflicted is way worse than torturing or murdering someone, but he's done that as well. Number 1. Freddy Krueger. When I was researching for this video, I was shocked at the huge jump in violence between Freddy and any other killer on this list in terms of violence, with some of his kills going so far to the extreme that they border along comedy because they are that absurd. But don't let that distract you from some of his other kills, which are genuinely disgusting, disturbing, and violent to no end. Of course, we'll start off with what Freddy's known for, stalking people in their dreams and terrorizing them night after night, leaving them terrified to go to sleep, to the point where some of them refuse to sleep for days at a time, which is definitely torture. If I was to cover everything that Freddy's done, then this video would go on for an extremely long time, but some of the most shocking things he's done are transformed his famous gloves into syringes, piercing them straight into people's arms and sucking all of their insides out like a Capri Sun. Or turning someone's hearing aid into a parasite that latches onto their eardrum and maxes out the volume, making even quiet sounds ear-piercingly loud, and then proceeding to blow out their eardrums with the sound of nails on a chalkboard. Yes, literally death by nails on a chalkboard. Or slashing vertically across someone's arms and legs and then pulling out their veins. From there, he pulled them and yanked them, using them like strings to puppeteer the victim with. Of course, these things have been done while the victim was still alive and conscious, and none of them were fast, all of them were extremely drawn out and, I can imagine, extremely agonizing. And there are many, many more gruesome Freddy kills, but I think this is already enough to cement him firmly as the #1 spot on this list. And there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, and if you disagree with any of the placements, let me know in the comments below and explain why. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.